I still remember the sound of my shoes on the marble floor as I stepped into the house. Not just any house. This place looked like something out of a luxury magazine. A rental, I guessed, or maybe it really belonged to Tom, Maria's boss. I hadn't met him before, but I'd heard the name often enough. He was always calling last minute, or needing her in early, or wanting to grab a quick drink after work, that turned into her getting home at 10 p.m. I never said much about it. I trusted her. Or more honestly, I wanted to trust her. That night was supposed to be about her. Her promotion, her big win. She'd been working so hard, and I was proud of her. Genuinely. I even joked in the car on the way over that I'd get a +1 of the year trophy for tagging along to an office party where I knew no one and cared even less. She smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. We arrived separately. That was her suggestion, something about getting there early to help set up. I didn't think much of it at the time. Traffic made me 20 minutes late, and I figured she'd be inside already, mingling. I walked through the door, nodding awkwardly at a few people, and scanned the crowd. That's when I saw her. She was sitting on the arm of a velvet chair near the window, just slightly turned away from everyone. Her legs were crossed, her head tilted down, phone in hand. Her face was lit up. Not by the chandelier, not by the flickering fireplace, but by the screen. She was smiling. Not a half smile. A real *mate kind of smile. The kind of smile you give to someone who says something personal. The kind of smile I hadn't seen in a while. I hesitated for a second, unsure if I should interrupt. She looked removed, like the party was happening around her, not with her. Then I stepped closer. She didn't notice. Or if she did, she pretended not to. I leaned down a bit and said her name. She flinched. Oh, hey, sorry, work thing. She flipped her phone down, screen to the chair cushion. I caught a flash of a name, just a first name. Tom. She reached for a glass of champagne and gave me a quick peck on the cheek. You finally made it. I did, I said, trying to smile. Am I late for the toast? No, not yet, she said, already scanning the room like she needed to be anywhere but next to me. People are still arriving. I gestured to the phone. Everything okay? Yeah, just a couple of last-minute messages from the team. You know how it is. She didn't meet my eyes. You want me to grab you a drink? I asked. She waved her glass. I'm good. Why don't you go mingle? I'll catch up with you in a sec. It was one of those sentences that felt like a polite brush-off. But this was her night, and I didn't want to make a scene. So I did what she asked. I walked away. I let it go. At least I pretended to. The rest of the room felt like a different world entirely. Laughter, champagne, music, polished and effortless. Strangers smiled at me politely as I passed. All sharp suits and perfect hair. I grabbed a drink from a tray and tried to fade into the crowd, but my eyes kept drifting back to her. She hadn't moved. She was still glued to her phone, her expression soft, her fingers flying over the keyboard. A few coworkers passed by and said something. I couldn't hear what, but she barely looked up, just nodded and kept typing. A few minutes later, I circled back. She was still there, still on that chair, still texting, that same tiny smile flickering across her lips. I walked up again, slower this time. She noticed me coming, because this time she locked her phone and tucked it into her bag before I got close. You okay? I asked. Yeah, of course, she said, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. Why? You've been over here a while. Just answering some work stuff. I told you. You told me it was a party. She smiled. Tight. You're reading into things again. Am I? Yes. She said it quickly. Too quickly. Mark, seriously. Just enjoy the night. Please. I tried. I really did. I even made small talk with one of her coworkers. Some guy from accounting who couldn't stop talking about crypto. But I wasn't listening. I couldn't focus. My eyes kept wandering back to that chair, to her bag, to her unreadable expression when no one was watching. And then I saw him, Tom. He walked in late like he wanted to be noticed. Tall, confident, expensive-looking suit that probably cost more than our mortgage. People greeted him like a celebrity. Maria didn't move at first. But then, just as he caught sight of her, she stood. He smiled. She smiled back. And I swear to God, it wasn't the same smile she gave me earlier. They didn't touch. Not really. Just a quick handshake, a laugh, a whisper. But her whole posture changed. Like she lit up. Like his presence rewired the energy in her body. I stood frozen with a drink in my hand and a knot in my stomach. She didn't look for me once. When the toast finally happened, she was by his side. Not mine. Everyone clapped and raised their glasses, and I watched as she leaned in toward him, laughing at some comment he made under his breath. Her fingers brushed his arm. Maybe it was nothing, but my chest tightened all the same. The weirdest part? No one else seemed to notice. From the outside, it was a perfect evening. Elegant, smooth, professional. She was the golden girl being celebrated, and he was just the proud mentor. No one saw the way her eyes lingered too long. No one noticed how she stiffened slightly when I walked past. No one cared that she hadn't introduced me to a single person. I was her husband, but that night I felt like a ghost. She finally came over toward the end of the evening, when most people were either tipsy or headed for the door. She looked flushed, glowing in a way I couldn't place. Not from alcohol. Not from the party. It was something else. "Hey!" she said, linking her arm through mine. "Sorry I've been all over the place. You doing okay?" I nodded. "Fine. You sure?" "I'm sure." We stood there for a moment, just standing, like two strangers waiting for an elevator. She looked around the room again. Her hand was still resting on my arm, but it felt like an afterthought, like she was doing it out of obligation. "Ready to go?" I asked. She hesitated. "Yeah, just let me say goodbye to a few people." "Tom." She glanced at me sharply. "What?" "Nothing." She didn't answer, just slipped her arm away and disappeared back into the crowd. And I stood there, watching her walk away, watching the space between us grow wider, knowing something had changed, and maybe it always had been. The car ride home was quiet. Not the peaceful kind of quiet, either. Not the "I'm tired" after a long night silence we used to share after weddings or dinner parties, where we'd hold hands between the seats and hum along to the radio. This was different. This was cold, tense, like sitting next to a stranger who didn't want to be there. She scrolled through her phone, as usual, thumb moving without pause. The screen lit up her face, and I watched her smile faintly before the expression quickly disappeared. She turned the screen away from me just slightly, but enough to make it obvious. I looked forward and gripped the wheel. "You looked great tonight," I said, mostly just to break the silence. She glanced over, almost surprised I'd spoken. "Thanks. I mean it." Another pause. Then, "You looked good too." But she didn't say it like she meant it. She didn't reach over. Didn't ask what I thought of the party. Didn't bring up the toast or the speeches or even the fact that this night was supposed to be about us, her success, our journey. Nothing. Just a vague smile and more screen time. I could feel the distance between us like a physical thing. When we pulled into the driveway, she waited for me to unlock the door. Normally she'd lean into me, arm wrapped around mine as we walked in. This time she moved ahead. Quick, casual, detached. The front hallway light flicked on. She kicked off her heels, muttered something about being exhausted, and went straight to the bedroom without waiting for me. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, listening to the soft glow of her phone light flicker every few minutes. She faced the other direction in bed. No good night. No kiss. Just silence. I could hear her breathing change when she fell asleep, but I didn't sleep. I just stared, thoughts spinning faster than I could hold on to. And that was when it started. Not the suspicion that came at the party. No. What started that night was the cataloging, the rewinding, the mental stacking of things that hadn't made sense but that I had brushed off for too long. Like how, in the past few months, she had started working late, almost twice a week. Always last minute. Always some fire to put out at the office, some new initiative. I used to admire how driven she was, how much she cared about her career. Now I just noticed how vague the details were. What meetings? With who? About what? I asked once. She said something about team restructuring. But the way she said it was too practiced, too polished. She'd clearly prepared for me to ask. And it wasn't just the schedule. It was the wardrobe. The sudden shift from business casual to business elegant. New dresses, new shoes. Perfume I'd never smelled before. Even the way she did her hair changed, sleek, sharp, purposeful. One Saturday morning a few weeks back, I'd asked her where she was headed. Seeing her dressed like she was meeting someone. She said she was going to a yoga class. I remember laughing. In heels? I'd asked, teasing. She blinked, then smiled like I was joking, even though I wasn't. No, she said. I'm changing after coffee. I'm just meeting a friend first. But she never mentioned a name. And when she came back, she smelled like cologne. That was the first time I had that sinking feeling in my chest. I told myself I was being paranoid. That I was projecting things from my own insecurities. That she'd always been independent, and I shouldn't suddenly question that just because of one strange detail. But that night at the party made all of it snap into focus. Now, everything felt suspect. Every text she typed and tilted away. Every excuse for why she couldn't meet for lunch. Every story that was just a little too clean, too well rehearsed. I started watching more closely. Not obsessively, not yet. But I was alert. And once I started paying attention, the inconsistencies piled up fast. She started locking her phone. She had never done that before. In fact, we used to share everything, codes, passwords, even each other's email accounts when we were booking travel or checking schedules. Now she was suddenly a vault. One night, her phone buzzed at 11:40 p.m. I saw the screen light up, Tom. Just that name. No message preview. She grabbed it off the nightstand before I could even blink. It's just a work thing, she said, flipping it face down. At midnight, she shrugged. Different time zones. Tom's in the same city. She looked at me for a moment. Not angry, not scared, just cold. You're being paranoid again, she said, and rolled over. But it wasn't paranoia. It was instinct. The kind that doesn't need a smoking G*N or a dramatic confrontation. It was a quiet unraveling of trust, thread by thread. The next day, she left early for a brunch with the girls. I didn't ask questions. I waited an hour, then checked her location. Yes, I still had access to the shared map on our phones. It showed her in Midtown. None of her friends lived there. I texted her just to test it. Hope you're having fun. Say hi to Chloe for me. The response came 10 minutes later. Will do. We're laughing so hard right now, face with tears of joy. That was the moment I knew she was lying. Chloe had moved to Denver 6 months ago. I didn't respond. I just stared at the screen, stomach twisting. I didn't say anything when she got home either. I needed more. That week, I noticed she stopped sharing her location entirely. The setting was turned off. She said it was a battery-saving thing. I said nothing. She asked if I was okay. I said I was fine. She smiled and said, good. Then kissed me like I was her brother. The next Sunday, I checked her laundry. Something I never used to do. But something in me had snapped. And there it was. A shirt, crumpled at the bottom of the basket, with the faintest trace of aftershave on the collar. Not mine. Not anything I'd ever worn. And again, that same perfume. Hers, now stronger, bolder, mixed in like a signature over someone else's name. I sat there, holding that shirt like it was a confession written in fabric. The stupid part? I still wanted to be wrong. I still wanted this to all be a coincidence, a misunderstanding, a stupid midlife reinvention. But I knew better. By now, I'd replayed the party in my head 100 times. The way she smiled at Tom. The way she touched his arm. The way she avoided mine. The way she walked away before I could ask her anything. I was starting to feel like a fool. A guest in my own marriage. Placeholder. One night, I looked at our wedding photo on the wall. Us on the beach, barefoot and grinning, sand in our hair, and I didn't recognize that woman anymore. I didn't recognize me either. I wasn't the husband. I was the alibi, the disguise, the camouflage for someone else's double life. That night, I sat in the kitchen long after she went to bed. I opened my laptop and started typing her name into the search bar, not even knowing what I was looking for. Then I stopped, because I already knew where this was heading, and I wasn't ready for the answer. Not yet. There's a moment in every relationship when doubt becomes proof. A shift so subtle it doesn't come with a bang, but once it happens, there's no turning back. Mine came on a Thursday night. I hadn't planned it. I wasn't trying to be some amateur detective. I just wanted to grab a charger. That's all. She had taken mine again, and hers was still plugged into the wall beside the couch. She was in the shower. I walked downstairs, half asleep, annoyed and barefoot. I reached down to grab the cable and her phone was there, unlocked, face up, lit. It was instinct, I swear. I didn't even mean to look, but I saw it. A message bubble, just one, sitting there like a spark in a gas-filled room. Tom, missed that laugh. I still hear it sometimes. Wine next week. I froze. The little circle with his face hovered next to the message. A selfie he'd clearly taken at work, leaning back in his chair, shirt unbuttoned at the collar. Casual, confident, mate in the way only two people with a history could be. Then came the photo. Not from him, from her. It was one I'd never seen before. Maria at a bar, mid-laugh, her hand covering her mouth like someone had just said something dirty. Her eyes bright, not blurry or rushed. This was taken with care. Framed. Shared on purpose. The timestamp? From a night she told me she was working late. Finishing end-of-quarter reports. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. I opened the thread. The first few messages were innocent enough. Office jokes. Inside references. But then they shifted. Little things. Things I never said to her, but he did. Tom, still thinking about the way you looked in that dress. Maria, your trouble. Tom, only for you. Maria, I need to behave. Tom, since when? Smirking face. I scrolled faster, not even feeling my fingers move. Maria, he's starting to notice. Tom, let him. You're not his possession. Maria, I just feel guilty sometimes. Tom, you don't owe him your whole life. You deserve more. There it was. Not just flirtation. Not a one-time mistake. This was ongoing. Emotional. Maybe physical. Probably both. Weeks of messages. Maybe months. Carefully curated, hidden in plain sight, guarded by a password I apparently didn't need, because this was meant to stay hidden without suspicion. And I've been too slow. The worst part? I didn't feel rage. Not right away. What I felt was a strange kind of grief. Quiet. Paralyzing. Like someone had reached into my chest and pulled out a piece of me I hadn't realized was missing. Then I heard the water turn off upstairs. I dropped the phone back where I found it and walked to the kitchen like nothing had happened. The faucet was running. I filled a glass of water, hand trembling slightly, and stood by the sink, staring at the dark window like it could offer some kind of answer. A few minutes later, she came down the stairs in her robe, hair damp, eyes soft from the heat. Hey, she said casual. Couldn't sleep. I turned and nodded. Needed some water. She leaned against the doorway. You okay? I'm fine, I lied. You? She hesitated. Just tired. I nodded. Long week. Yeah. Then silence. Just that hum of space between two people who used to know each other. She walked up, kissed my cheek, and went to the fridge. I watched her, this woman I had lived beside for years. Her robe hung loose at the collar. She didn't flinch. Didn't hide anything. She didn't know I knew. Not yet. And I wasn't ready to let her know. Not until I had more. The next morning, I sat in the car outside her office. I didn't tell her. Said I had errands. But I needed to see something for myself. Her company shared a building with a few other startups. A big, glass-paneled complex with a coffee shop on the first floor and a parking lot that wrapped around the side. She always parked in the same row. Always went in through the back entrance. I knew the routine. I'd dropped her off 100 times before. She walked in that morning like always, coffee in one hand, phone in the other. She was smiling. Not at anyone. Just at the screen. 10 minutes later, Tom pulled in. Same suit. Same smirk. He didn't rush. He didn't hide. And that alone made my chest go tight. I watched as he stepped inside. I didn't follow. I just sat there for another half hour, mind spinning, fists clenched in my lap. I wanted to believe it was just texts, just a stupid flirtation, something that hadn't crossed the line, something she regretted. But I didn't believe that anymore. Not after that photo. Not after those messages. That night I didn't confront her. I needed time, space to think. I wasn't ready for the fight, not without clarity. So I waited, and a week later I followed her. It was a Friday. She said she had dinner with a mentor from the industry. When I asked who, she said it was someone she used to work with before she joined Tom's team. Not a big deal, she said, already grabbing her clutch and heels. Want me to drop you off? I offered casually. She froze. No, it's okay. I'll Uber. I might be late. I nodded. Text me when you're on your way back. She smiled, but it was the same brittle smile I'd started to recognize. The one she wore when she was already somewhere else in her head. After she left, I grabbed my keys. I didn't follow right away. I gave her a head start, then opened the Uber app and guessed which route she'd take. I knew the kind of place she liked. Trendy, upscale, discreet. I found her 2 rides later. A downtown wine bar, candlelit tables, low music. I parked across the street and waited. 20 minutes later, they walked out together. Maria and Tom. They didn't kiss. Not right away. But their bodies were close. Too close. She laughed at something he said, then reached for his arm. He leaned in. She touched his chest. He whispered something. She tilted her head, smiling. Then came the moment. She hugged him. It was long. Too long. His hand moved to her lower back. Her fingers gripped his shoulder. They didn't kiss, but they didn't need to. It was worse than a kiss. Because it wasn't accidental. It was careful. Familiar. Rehearsed. I took a photo. I didn't want to, but I did. I needed something real. Something outside of my own memory. Something she couldn't deny. Then I drove home. She came back 2 hours later. Dinner went late, she said, shrugging out of her coat. With your mentor? I asked. She nodded, already walking past me. Yeah, good convo. Tiring though. She didn't see the way I looked at her. The way my hands were shaking in my lap. She didn't know I'd seen it all. The next morning, I printed the **TS. The texts, the photos, the evidence. I put them in an envelope. No name, just placed it on the kitchen table. She found it before I finished my coffee. She stood over the envelope for a long time, then opened it. Didn't say a word. Just flipped through each page like she was reading a contract. And when she was done, she sat down. Calm. Still. Almost detached. I watched her face, waiting for the denial, the panic, the excuses. They never came. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She didn't even try to lie. She just looked at me and said, "So, now you know." Like it wasn't a betrayal. Like it was just a formality. Like the hiding was the only wrong thing, not the act itself. And in that moment, something broke inside me. Not the anger. Not the trust. Something deeper. Something older. Something that had believed, despite it all, that maybe, just maybe, this was still a marriage. She didn't say sorry. That's the part one keeps circling back to in my head. Not the messages, not the pictures, not even the fact that her relationship with Tom had moved past something she could deny. It was the way she sat there, flipping through the papers like they were a business report and not the wreckage of our life. When she finally looked at me, her face wasn't angry or ashamed, just flat. Like all the oxygen had been drained from the room and we were both pretending to breathe. "So, now you know," she said again, quieter this time. I nodded once. "Yeah." Another long pause. Then she asked, "What do you want to say?" I blinked. "You're asking me?" Her hands stayed on the envelope, fingers tracing the edge of one of the photos. Her nails short and perfectly shaped. Always perfect. Even now. "I don't know what you want from me," she said. "How about the truth?" I replied. "Start there." She looked down, exhaled through her nose. then said, "I didn't plan for this to happen." That line, "I didn't plan for this," was so rehearsed I almost laughed. "Okay," I said, trying to keep my voice level. "So when did you start planning to lie to me?" Her jaw tightened. She didn't answer. "Was it that first night you stayed late?" I went on. "Or the time you came back from yoga, smelling like cologne? Or was it when you smiled at his texts in the middle of your own celebration and told me I was the one being too sensitive?" She flinched at that last part. Just a flicker. But it was something. "I wasn't trying to hurt you," she said finally. "No? Then what were you trying to do, Maria? Because from here, it looks like you've been building a second life behind my back while using me as a cover." "It wasn't like that." "Then tell me what it was like." I snapped. She stood up abruptly and started pacing, arms folded across her chest. "I don't know," she muttered. "It wasn't about him, okay? Not really." That caught me off guard. "What?" "It wasn't." She stopped, turned to face me. "It wasn't just about Tom. It was everything. Me. This house. This life. I felt like I was suffocating, Mark. Like I didn't belong to myself anymore." "So you fixed that by sleeping with your boss?" She winced but didn't deny it. "I didn't sleep with him right away." I scoffed. "Oh good. So this was a slow betrayal. That makes it better." "Don't do that." "Do what, Maria?" I stood up now too, my voice shaking. "Point out the obvious? You lied. You hid things. You called me paranoid. You gaslit me for months. And now that it's all out in the open, you're what, trying to spin it into some existential identity crisis?" "I'm telling you how I felt." "Great. And I'm telling you that your feelings don't justify what you did." She looked away again, then sat back down. This time she looked tired. Really tired. Like all the fight had drained out of her. "I didn't think it would go this far," she said. "At first it was just attention, conversation. Felt good to be seen. I didn't think it meant anything." I sat back down too, slower this time. I was shaking. From anger. From heartbreak. From exhaustion. "You know," I said, "I get that marriages go through phases. I get that people grow apart. But there are things you talk through. Not sneak around to avoid. You could have told me you were struggling." "I tried." "When?" I snapped. "When you rolled over in bed and ignored me for 3 weeks. Or when you spent every other night texting him while telling me it was a work crisis. I didn't know how to say it. You didn't even try." She rubbed her temples, as if I was the one being unreasonable. "You always need everything defined, Mark," she said. "Everything has to make sense. Fit into a box. But life doesn't work that way. People don't always know what they're doing until it's too late." "You know what that sounds like?" "What?" "An excuse." Silence again. A long one. You could have heard the fridge hum. Then she said, "So what happens now?" I stared at her. At this woman I used to know. Used to love. Still did, in some warped, twisted way. But it didn't matter anymore. "You tell me," I said. Her eyes darted up. "What?" I said, "You tell me," I repeated. "What do you think should happen next?" She hesitated. "I don't want to lose you." My laugh was hollow. "You lost me months ago. You just didn't notice." "Mark." "No." I cut her off. "Don't do the sad eyes now. Don't try to flip this into some tragic love story. You didn't make a mistake. You made a series of choices, one after the other, and each one pulled us further apart." She looked like she might cry then, but still no apology, no real remorse, just that same tired look, like she was the one suffering. "What do you want me to do?" she asked. I paused. "I don't know." That was the most honest thing I'd said all night. I really didn't know. I didn't know if I wanted her to leave right then or if I needed more answers. I didn't know if I was ready to tear our life down or if I was holding on for some ghost of what we used to be. But I knew this, whatever was between us now wasn't trust. Wasn't love. Wasn't partnership. It was survival. It was image. It was fear. That night we didn't speak again. We lay in the same bed, backs turned. A canyon of silence between us. I stared at the ceiling, my hands gripping the blanket like it was the last solid thing I had left. She didn't touch me, didn't try, just lay still, breathing slow, like she was already somewhere else in her mind. And maybe she was. By morning, she was already up, dressed, hair done, a cup of coffee in hand. It was like nothing had happened. She didn't mention the envelope, didn't bring up the conversation, just asked, "Do you need anything before I go?" I shook my head. She nodded, said, "Okay," then walked out. And just like that, the performance continued. The next few days were filled with silence masquerading as normalcy. We still talked. About groceries. About bills. About the dog needing a vet appointment. But none of it meant anything. It was all surface. All autopilot. She came home on time. Kept her phone in plain sight. No more secrets. But that was the worst part. Because I knew that wasn't for me. It was for show. Damage control. She wasn't being open. She was being calculated. Like she knew the storm had passed and now she could try to sweep up the pieces without making too much noise. But the thing is, once the glass shatters, you can't unbreak it. You can sweep it, hide it, vacuum every corner. But you'll still find shards months later. In the carpet, in your socks, in the soles of your feet when you least expect it. And every cut reminds you, this is what it feels like to stay. It's a strange thing. What happens after the truth comes out? You expect fire. You expect screaming, slamming doors, throwing clothes into suitcases, threats of lawyers, bitter speeches with shaky voices and pointed fingers. But what actually happens, at least in my case, was something quieter, colder, more like frostbite than fire. You don't notice the damage until something falls off. That week, we carried on like people who were pretending not to bleed. Maria and I still shared a home, but not a life. We moved through rooms like ghosts with good posture, smiling for the neighbors, nodding at each other in the kitchen, keeping conversations locked to logistics. Garbage night, gas bill, the guest bathroom sink is leaking again. We became efficient, respectful, polite, and yet every word between us felt like it was wrapped in plastic. There was no int asterisk Macy. Not even in the fights, because there were no more fights. It was like she decided that if we couldn't fix what broke, we could at least stage the scene. She cooked more. I mowed the lawn before she asked. She started locking her phone again, but this time, she told me the password, almost like a peace offering. "This way you won't worry," she said. I didn't even bother to check, because I wasn't worried anymore. I was just done. Not angry, not even sad, really, just numb. And honestly, that scared me more than the anger ever had. We tried to talk one night, not about the cheating itself, about us. It was a Wednesday. The dog was curled up on the couch between us. The TV was on low. Some crime drama we weren't really watching. I was rubbing the space between my eyes, trying to ignore the dull ache that had taken up permanent residence behind them. She muted the TV. "Mark," she said. I looked over. "Do you want to go to therapy?" she asked. I paused. "You mean like couples therapy?" She nodded. I thought about it. "Would you go even if I said no?" She blinked. "What do you mean?" "I mean, would you go for yourself?" She looked away, then down at her hands. "I don't know." That was the most honest thing she'd said in days. And I think that was when I finally accepted it. She wasn't sorry she hurt me. She was sorry she got caught. She was sorry her other world had collapsed. And now she was trying to see if she could rebuild here, back in the life she'd left behind. But the thing is, once someone leaves emotionally, they don't really come back. They might move back into the same space, but the furniture never fits the same way. We started to sleep in the same bed again. That was her idea. "I don't want to sleep in the guest room anymore," she said one morning. "It's stupid." I shrugged. "Okay." But we didn't touch. Not once. No late-night whispers. No legs brushing beneath the sheets. Just two bodies on a mattress, separated by a no-man's land of tension and practiced indifference. Sometimes I'd wake up and watch her breathe. Wonder who she was dreaming about. Wonder if she even dreamed of me anymore. Or if she ever did. One Saturday, I woke up earlier than usual and found her standing at the front door. She wasn't dressed for work. She wasn't going to the gym. She wasn't holding her purse. She was just standing there, in a hoodie, barefaced, keys in her hand, staring at the doorknob like it might bite her. I watched for a minute from the hallway, unnoticed, and I realized she looked lost, not regretful, not emotional, just directionless, like whatever she had left Tom for, if she'd even truly left him, wasn't waiting on the other side of the door anymore. And now she didn't know where to go. That was the moment I knew. She didn't come back to me because she missed me. She came back because the other door had closed. I didn't confront her. What was the point? I went back to bed, pulled the covers up, let the weight of it settle over me again. By the time I got up, she was gone, and I didn't ask where she went. That next week, we had dinner with her parents. They were in town and wanted to celebrate her promotion. I didn't know what they knew. I assumed nothing. She was good at hiding things, even from herself. The meal was normal. Too normal. I nodded at all the right times. Her dad made jokes about us, finally settling down. And her mom asked about grandkids like she hadn't just watched our marriage die behind our eyes. Maria laughed, answered politely, sipped her wine. She looked composed, charming, and I realized she was still performing. Even now, even in front of people who loved her. And I hated her for that, for how easily she could switch back into that mask. I hated her because I used to be that mask's favorite audience. That night, after dinner, we sat in the car parked in our driveway, neither of us reaching for the door handle. I said, "Do you think they knew?" She shook her head. "No, they wouldn't have understood." "Why not?" She paused. "Because I don't." She didn't look at me when she said it, just stared straight ahead, at our house, at the place we built. At the wreckage she kept walking around like it wasn't already on fire. A few days later, she tried again. We were doing the dishes. I was rinsing. She was drying. She said, out of nowhere, "I think I want to quit my job." I froze, plate in hand. "Why?" She shrugged. "I can't work under Tom anymore. It's complicated." "Is it?" She nodded. "He's been distant." I smirked. "And that bothers you?" She went quiet. "You're mad because the man you cheated with stopped texting?" Her head dropped. "That's what this is about, right?" I continued. "It's not about guilt. It's not about us. You're upset because he moved on and now you're stuck here, back where you started." "That's not fair," she said, voice small. "No," I said. "What's not fair is how you burned this house down and handed me a garden hose. What's not fair is how you treated this marriage like a backup plan." She didn't respond, just turned off the faucet and left the room. I started sleeping in the guest room again. Not out of punishment, just necessity. Felt more honest. I couldn't keep pretending. Couldn't keep laying next to her like the body heat meant something. Like the walls weren't closing in. We became roommates. Nothing more. I'd hear her in the bathroom brushing her teeth. Hear her car pull into the driveway at 7:40 p.m. On the dot. She didn't stay out late anymore. But I stopped caring where she went. That was when I knew the marriage was really over. Not because of what she did, but because of what I no longer felt. Then one night around 3 a.m., I got up for water and found her on the living room floor. She was sitting cross-legged in the dark, wearing one of my old hoodies, staring at a box of our wedding photos. I didn't say anything. She looked up, eyes red, and said, "Do you ever think about how happy we used to be?" I didn't answer. She sniffled. "I keep trying to figure out when it started to go wrong." I leaned against the wall. It wasn't one moment. Then what? It was every little one. The ones we didn't talk about. The ones we ignored. She nodded slowly, eyes back on the photos. "I miss you," she said. "I miss who I thought you were," I replied. And then I went back upstairs. We went on, silently circling a life that no longer fit. Conversations were shallow, gestures mechanical. One morning, I found her suitcase packed by the door. She said, "I think we both know this isn't working." I didn't stop her. No yelling. No begging. Just quiet acceptance. She left like someone exiting a meeting that ran too long. And I stood there, realizing I wasn't heartbroken. I was relieved. Weeks passed. The silence she left behind was louder than her absence. Then one morning, I saw her at the door. No makeup, empty hands, eyes tired. "I didn't come back for us," she said. "I just had nowhere else to go." I nodded. We didn't argue. We didn't pretend. She left again. That was our real goodbye. Not loud. Not tragic. Just final. That's when I knew. The marriage didn't end that day. It had died long before either of us admitted it.